Okay, I'll try to get this in one video, how to write an essay and the exam. As I've said before, this is a course in academic philosophy. Philosophy is a discipline. Academic philosophy is a discipline. It's not anything goes. It's not about expressing how you feel about this or that. It's not an invitation for that at all. Right? So don't do that. And also in your essay, don't be all over the place. Be organized. Okay, now, the rest of this file is just an intro. The rest of this file I divided into two parts, content and style. Let's go with content. Opening paragraph. Easiest 2 marks that you can get. And yet a lot of students blow it because they were taught in other courses how to do the opening paragraph. But you're not in those other courses. You're writing a short paper, 5 to 7 pages. So basically I'm going to give you an example of an opening paragraph. I'm going to use topic number 1. In this essay, I am going to explain what Socrates means by the unexamined life is not worth living. Then I'm going to explain to what extent Robert Nozick would agree with Socrates. Then in the final part of the essay, I'm going to argue and pick one. I'm just going to pick one. Then in the final part of the essay, I'm going to argue that Nozick has the stronger position on the topic compared with Socrates. Okay, period. That's it. No flowery stuff, no long-winded, ever since the beginning of time. Who wants to read that? Right? Your TA, your professor, you're grading 90, who knows, 120 essays, 60 essays, whatever the case may be. Waste of time. Just get opening paragraph, 2 marks, very easy. Right? You'd be amazed how many students blow the opening paragraph. Okay. Very simple. Right? Okay, what's after that? Concluding paragraph should be even shorter than the opening paragraph. I've graded 1 million essays, maybe 20 million essays in my time. And I've seen short paper like this, full page for the opening paragraph. They give me content. They give me some of the summary. They give me part of the content of their argument. And the opening paragraph is ridiculous. The concluding paragraph, sometimes see a whole page for the concluding paragraph. Are you kidding me? 5 to 7 pages, the concluding paragraph is a full page. Even half a page is ridiculous. Right? Cut that out. Okay, another thing. A lot of marks are lost. I've been saying this for years because the student did not take time to understand the question. Right? In many cases, they change the question to something else, sometimes radically different, and then they'll answer that. Well, if that answer has nothing to do with the original question, they get 0. You don't get more marks the more you write, and you've got to be on. You can't be off somewhere else. Right? So understand the question. This goes for the exam too. A lot of marks lost because people, it didn't say do this, but yet they do it. They do something. Just do what the question asks. Take the time to understand it. Do no more than what the question asks. You don't get more marks for writing more. If it asks you to explain so-and-so's theory of X, you don't download everything you know about so-and-so. No, just focus on the question. Don't do less than what the question asks. That should be common sense, but it's not that common. Isomorphic. If your question is parts, make your answer have parts, and the parts should correspond to the parts of the question. So let's go back to our essay. This can also apply to an essay question. An exam question might have 2 parts. Well, answer the first part, put a space, and answer the second part. Don't mix it all together. Whoever's grading has to separate them and, okay, this is for this, this is for that. What a pain. You don't want to be a pain. Isomorphic. So you look at the essay topics again. Right? Okay. Both of them have 3 parts. The first one says explain, the second one says explain, the third one says argue. Right? Your essay should have 3 parts. After the opening paragraph, if you're doing number 1, it would be the Socrates. And don't use subheadings and all the rest of it. Just use language, a sentence. Right? Okay, I'm now going to explain what Socrates meant by the unexamined life is not worth living. And you go through that, and then when you're done, new paragraph, I'm now going to explain to what extent, if any, Robert Nozick would agree with Socrates on this topic. And then, okay, now that I'm finished with, when you're finished, a new paragraph. Now that I'm finished with Nozick, I'm going to argue that Nozick has a stronger position on the topic. And then away you go. Right? So the essay would be isomorphic. When it's all over the place, some Socrates here, some Nozick, then some more Socrates, then some notes, then some of your argumentation, then you're summarizing notes, then you're doing some argumentation again, you're doing some summary of Socrates. Absolutely ridiculous. What a pain to grade. Negative headspace, right? A little bit of a slip there. Negative headspace, marks go down. That's psychology. Okay, I'm going to get more into that. Okay, isomorphic. Quotations. When you use somebody else's words, use quotation marks. I'm going to have more on quotation marks. If you're putting it into your own words, you don't use quotation marks. You're paraphrasing. If you use quotation marks, you're quoting a source, you're quoting somebody, you need quotation marks and you need the source. Somebody emailed me on the weekend, what makes one argument stronger than another? Great question, right? I might have overlooked that if I wouldn't email that, right? You have to make a judgment call, but there's a variety of criteria. These ones are important to me. UTA might stress something else, right? I'm sure they would agree with all or most of these, but they might stress something else. They might add something to it. Anyway, clarity. I don't reward obscurity. I don't give high marks because, ooh, it's really thick and obscure. This person must be really smart. I must give them a high mark. That's ridiculous. If I don't understand what BA, MA, PhD, 5 books, 15 articles, and chapters in there, if I can't understand what you're saying, maybe the problem is not with me, right? You want to be clear. I can't give a grade to something I don't understand what you're saying. Clarity is a skill. You don't want to be ambiguous, etc., etc., etc. Internal consistency. Okay, so clarity. One author might be more clear in their argumentation than the other. That is something in favor of the first person comparing. Internal consistency. If an argument has internal inconsistency, that's a negative for that argument. Inconsistent, two statements are inconsistent when both cannot be true. They might both be false, but they both cannot be true. If you have an argument with inconsistent premises, meaning these two premises both cannot be true. At most, one of them can be true. They might both be false, but they both cannot be true. That weakens an argument. Internal consistency. Also, contradiction is, people often use it synonymously. Contradiction is two statements that are contradictory when, if one is true, the other must be false. There's a difference between contradiction and inconsistent. Right? But anyway, search the dynamics of the nature of the argument, the substance of the argument, or what's typically called internal consistency. External consistency is consistency with outside of the writing, outside of the argument. Consistency with what is known. If you go postmodern, I'm not going to reward you if I'm grading this. Fashionable nonsense, that's what it is. Right? Is what this person's saying consistent with, for example, modern biology, modern physics, modern medicine, right? Common knowledge. I mean, it's not just physics, it's common knowledge. The Earth is a globe, right? That the Earth is a planet. You get that in physics, obviously. If your author is still in the flat Earth mentality, that's a negative there. Okay, so is all of the argument consistent, externally consistent? Are any parts of it that are not externally consistent, that really fly in the face? You can have authors who argue against the consensus of experts on something. That's fine, that's different. They're actually making an argument for the consensus being wrong. You know, Darwin did that. Einstein did that. Right? But that's not what I'm talking about here. Okay, Occam's razor refers strictly to competing explanations. You've got two different explanations. Which one is simpler? If the two explanations are equal in power, you go for the simpler one. Why? There's two reasons why Occam's razor is favored. One, a simpler argument, an argument with less parts, less explanatory entities, right, is less likely to go wrong than a complicated argument. Ceteris paribus, all other things being equal. Second, a simpler argument takes less argumentation, less argument and evidence to support the conclusion. Now, you might not be dealing with explanations, but you can still apply a quasi-Occam's razor to the arguments of both. And this one is appealing to entities, and this one is not. This is a simpler argument. It makes the argument stronger because, right? That sort of thing is impressive. Is a fallacy is not, fallacy does not mean false, right? Big, huge mistake. They're not synonyms. The first three letters are the same. Big deal. False refers to a statement. A statement is true or false. An argument is not true or false. Arguments range from quite strong to horribly weak. A fallacy is an error in reasoning. So, for example, hasty generalization. You should learn these on your own. Take a course. Better take a course where you can learn them. But if I say, well, I've only seen one cat in my life, I've never read anything about cats, but somebody told me that's a cat, and I saw it chase the mice, well, I tell you, all cats, or even if I said most cats, or even if I just said cats, cats love to chase mice. That's a general conclusion, and I drew it from a sample of one. Why is that a bad argument? There's billions of cats, from the present to the past. Forget the future. There's no future. Right? The past, even the past doesn't exist, just in our imagination. In the past and the present, billions of cats, and the sample is one, clearly too small. Fallacious reasoning. Right? If you don't know fallacies, you're not going to detect fallacies. Odds are, anyway. Right? It's good to know these things. Okay, a standard way of analyzing an argument is, are the premises relevant, acceptable, and sufficient? So let's go through this. I can have an argument, and an argument is at least one reason to support a conclusion. I have an argument where the premise is true. Okay, here's an example. Earth is a globe. Earth is a globe because Austin Matthews got the most goals this season in the NHL. That's true. Yeah, I'm a Leafs fan. That's true. But it's totally irrelevant to the conclusion. Right? Okay, acceptable does not, don't think you know what it means because you don't, unless you've taken this. Acceptable, a premise is acceptable if it's known to be true, either common knowledge or experts, right? And we take experts over the public. It's not acceptable if it's known to be false, or if it's controversial among the experts. I'm not talking 1,000 to 1, but a genuine controversy. It's not acceptable if even the experts don't agree on the truth, on whether it's true. It's not acceptable if it has a very unclear concept in it, where people are going to say, well, I can't say it's true or false until I know what is meant by this term. Right? Now, you want to give your author the benefit of the doubt. You're dealing with text, but if they use a key concept where it's just not clear what they mean, let's say justice. Right? Remember, University 101, almost every word has more than, word or phrase has more than one meaning. Right? Language is highly ambiguous. Okay. So even unclear key concepts, not acceptable. Now obviously if it's known to be false, it's not acceptable. Right? Are you going to get a fallacy in a premise? Odds are no. A premise should be one statement, unless it's a quotation of somebody. Right? And that's a premise. Well, if that argument in the quotation commits a fallacy, that person quoted is guilty of the fallacy. And if the person quoting that person uses that argument in their argument, then they're both guilty of that fallacy. Right? Sufficient. Sufficient means, okay, you might have premises that are true, you might have premises that are relevant, but there's not enough premises to give some decent support to that conclusion. Highly insufficient. Right? So you want to look at that. How well do they deal with, look at the premises for relevance, acceptability, and sufficiency. Another thing you should look at is how well do they anticipate counterarguments. You get this in a lot of different fields. My favorite is law. Vincent Bugliosi, my favorite lawyer, love reading his books, got a whole bunch of them over there, started with his book on JFK assassination, big, huge, thick book. What's interesting there, what really struck me, is a number of things. One thing is, when he's working on a case, he worked on a murder case, either as a prosecutor or as a defense attorney. When he was working on a case, he's deceased now, so I'm using past tense, and you'll see why that's relevant. When he was working on a case, he said he would stay up till typically 3 in the morning, workaholic. Why? all that time making his case? No. That's only part of what his preparation was. A lot of his preparation was trying to anticipate what are his opponents going to throw at him. What are they going to bring up? He doesn't want to be caught by surprise. He doesn't want to be caught saying, no question, Your Honor. Just caught by surprise. And great lawyers anticipate, don't just make strong cases. They anticipate what their opponents are going to throw at them, and they're ready for it. Great chess players are the same thing. They're thinking, you do this, I'll do that. You do this, I'll do that. Great fighters, martial arts, Bruce Lee. You do this, I'll do that. You do this, I'll do that. Great debaters, right? Same thing. You bring up this, I'm ready for it. You bring up this, I'm ready for it. Whoa, really bad in a debate with millions of people watching. Somebody brings up a topic or an argument, and you weren't prepared for that. You go, in front of 20, 30, 50 million people. Not good, right? Anticipation of counter-arguments, counter-evidence, right? These are things, these are criteria that you assess which argument is stronger than another. And again, there's no formula. You have to make a judgment call. Okay, I think there's enough for content, style. When I was a philosophy major, right? It's all about content, style. No, style matters. Style matters, and it's psychology. What I'm going to give you is gold. Edgar Allan Poe, right? Edgar Allan Poe, rest in peace. Early 1800s. Big American literary figure. Literary theorist, too. A literary critic. And he called his literary theory basically unity of effect. Right? He has some other phrases, too, but that's the best one. And it's basically like this. It goes like this. If you're writing a poem, or a short story, could also be a novel, but he focused on poems and short stories. Everything in there has, first of all, what's your audience? Who's your audience? Second, what effect you want to have on them. Maybe it's terror, maybe it's whatever, right? What effect you want to have on them, right? Well, okay. When you write your poem or your short story, everything in there should play a role toward that ultimate effect, unity of effect. And when Poe did about 100 book reviews, roughly 100 book reviews. When you read his book reviews, you can see him applying this principle, not just in his essays on literary style, but in his book reviews. You can see him applying this to, let's say, something written by Charles Dickens, where he says, you know, this part of Dickens' story does not contribute to the plot. It should not be there, right? Etc., etc. Now, why am I talking about this? You're over there, you're taking a course. Who's your audience? Your TA, right? What effect do you want to have on your TA? Well, if I'm you over there, I want my TA to go, wow, when that TA turns to my paper, right? They're grading what, 60, 55 out of shot, right? I want mine to stand out. So they go, wow, right? Mark goes up, and I want an A+, minimum an A. I want an A+. Okay, now let's talk style. I talk content, that's important. Let's talk style, unity of effect. Wow, a lot of students hand in garbage, and they've been doing it for decades, and professors have been complaining for decades. I'm not making this up. And now I'm one of them. I've been doing it for decades, complaining. Okay, well, everything you do in that essay, you've got to your TA. You want them to go wow, and you want to get an A+, at least an A. Well, double space your essay. You know how hard it is to grade when these things are single spaced and they write comments? It's a pain. Right away I'm in a negative headspace. Gee, you think I'm going to be fair with your content when I'm already in a negative headspace? Paragraphs, grade 12. Grade 12. High school, obviously, right? Great. I was lucky to be in a high school with a great English department. What they got us reading, I still marvel at it. It's wonderful. Also, style. There was one teacher in particular, Mrs. Bird. She sat, red ink all over her essays. Do an essay, red ink all over the place. She sat down with every student, one at a time, to go over the red ink, right? And I remember her going over an essay of mine, and she hurt my feelings. Red ink all over the place. First of all, red ink, right? One thing she says is, you don't know what a paragraph is. She was a straight talker, and I liked that. She didn't, don't want to hurt your feelings, but, you don't know what a paragraph is. Simple. She was right. I go, what? What do you mean? I don't know what a paragraph is. So look at this thing you call, looks like a paragraph here. It's so huge, it's huge. What are you doing in that paragraph? You're doing basically 3 different things in that paragraph. Break it into 3 paragraphs, see how it reads. She was right. I had a bad habit then, I still do, but at least I go back and I rethink my paragraphs, right? Not this big, huge, right? What am I doing in this paragraph? Why is it so big? When you're writing, you don't realize it sometimes. You look at it, whoa, why is this thing so big? What am I doing in this paragraph? I'm doing 4 different things. What if I break it into 4 paragraphs? It reads so much nicer, right? Better for, more reader friendly, right? Okay, paragraphing. Odds are many of you still don't know what a paragraph is. Get up to speed, study this, right? Indented paragraphs, right? Don't have everything left justified. Look at the PDF I gave with all those different scholars and the sample of their writing. Indented paragraphs, right? You're not doing an instruction manual. You're writing what's supposed to be a professional looking university paper. We're not going to lower our standards, right? You've got to raise yours. All right, so indented paragraphs. All of these are negative if it's not done, right? Professional reference style. I think should we use APA? I haven't looked at APA in I don't know how many years. I use Chicago Manual style. Forgot a closing parenthesis, so I'm going to correct my style right now. Right? Use a professional reference style and use it consistently. Right? Spelling. Aha! Spelling and grammar. Spelling. We're in Canada. Canadian University, right? North America. Canada, in terms of spelling and grammar and punctuation, Canada has 1 leg in the US, 1 leg in Britain, right? UK and Britain, is that the same? I'm just going to use them synonymously. I hope I'm not offending anybody. Okay, spelling. Now, Canadian publications, including the Canadian government or Canadian governments, they use British spelling. So color, C-O-L-O-U-R, program, P-R-O-G-R-A-M-M-E, center, C-E-N-T-R-E, etc., etc., etc. British spelling. Okay. If you're going to use British spelling, be consistent. Don't slide from one to the other. American spelling is closer to how we talk. Color would be C-O-L-O-R. I say color, I don't say color. Program, there's no M-E at the end. Program, not program me. Center, it's E-R. That's how I talk, center. I don't say centra, right? I prefer American spelling myself, right? And American punctuation. All right, we're going to get to punctuation in a few minutes. Whatever you do, right, be consistent. Now, if I'm over there, my professor, my TA, has a British accent, I'm using UK, British spelling, right? Unity of effect, same for punctuation. If my professor, I know for a fact, is American, I'm using American spelling, American punctuation. Why? Because it's a positive tick in their head, right? Unity of effect. You might think this doesn't matter. You are so wrong. You couldn't be more wrong. Right? So spelling, UK versus US. Right? Be consistent. Ask your prof or your TA, what do you prefer? Maybe they don't prefer anything. Right? Maybe they do. Doesn't hurt to ask. Right? Grammar, who versus whom, etc. That screwed me up for a long time. I'm still not 100% on that one. Right? Singular versus plural. Come on, let's get with it. Right? Everybody should get that one. Okay. Now, I produced a few years ago a PDF with about 5, 6 different scholars from different fields to show differences in style. The first one's Richard Dawkins, British style, spelling and punctuation. Single quotation marks, the comma and the period go outside, right? That's standard British style, right? Now, when I grade a class with essays, maybe sometimes half the class is using UK style, punctuation. I'm thinking, why? Why? Where do they come from? Odds are, weird things are going on, right? Be consistent. But again, think about your audience and what effect you want to have on them. I've had students tell me so many times, we were taught in high school never to use I in a university essay. And my reply is, who are these people who are teaching you? Did they ever go to university? Did they ever read academic authors? Again, that's why I put that PDF together. Not just philosophers, but biologists. At least one biologist. I've been a while since I looked at a physicist, a feminist, a political scientist, a literary scholar. That's the one I leave for last. That you want to study style, study from a literary scholar. Right? But anyway, look at those examples. I circle things. Look at them. Learn from them. Right? They all use I. In fact, when I was putting together this PDF, I have a huge library. Lots of different fields, not just philosophy, because I have lots of different interests. I had a hard time finding one author who didn't use I. Didn't use I. It's standard to use I in the academic world. So who are these people telling you not to use I? Now, so notice when I did the opening paragraph. In this essay, I will explain blah, 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 blah. Then I will explain blah, 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 blah. Finally, I will argue that so-and-so has the stronger argument on this topic than so-and-so, the other person. Right? I used I. And that's perfectly fine. Again, look at those examples. They all use I. Look how many times they use I. Circle them. But you don't see them saying, I feel, I feel. This is becoming an epidemic. It is. I'm getting essays where on one page, I feel, I feel, I feel. 5 I feels. Right? Second page, 4 I feels. Next page, I feel, I feel, I feel. Oh my goodness. It's becoming more and more common. That's not professional academic writing style. I listen to talk radio, I listen to sports radio. When the comments, I feel, they're talking about who's going to win, whatever. I feel, they're talking about a particular team. I feel. It's overdone. If you're going to use the phrase, use it sparingly. Right? Any phrase when you, resonance. I was doing a book, I wrote a book review years ago, and the author was using resonance, over and over again. It's just too much. Right? Have some balance. Right? Think about things like that. That's part of style. Punctuation. Single quotation marks versus double quotation marks. And on and on and on. Study